Hi, folks. This is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report. I talked in an earlier report about the wonderful beginning of northern pike season day that I had on the water. And I was fishing a small pond that's a favorite of mine because I can wade it. And I want this report to be a comparison between fishing when you're wading and fishing when you're in a boat. Because believe me, I've done both this year. And my day with a canoe on a windy day was abomination. I did very poorly. Not that I wasn't thrilled to be out fishing, but I was battling the wind constantly with a light canoe. My weight and a battery in the rear of the canoe made it almost impossible to control the front of the canoe, whether I was using the trolling motor or paddling. So what I was doing is constantly trying to keep in position rather than constantly fishing. Now let's move ahead to the next day when I waded. And when I wade, I don't care what the elements are. I don't care if it's windy. I don't care if it's raining. I'm in the water with the fish, and I can control my position totally. And I had a day where I had so many northern pike strikes and hookups, and I caught several fish. But I wouldn't have had that if I'd have been in a canoe, and I don't think anybody else would have had it based on where those pike were located and how I was able to fish them. I caught northern pike in a sort of a pocket, a bay of the pond that I fished, but it's a back bay kind of. And in the past, I have never, ever, ever done anything in that bay. And I've been fishing that pond for over 30 years. Never had I caught fish. Well, on this day, I decided, you know what? Maybe it's a little different. I'm going to cast right along the shore in a sort of horizontal manner. In other words, I'm casting in front of me along the shoreline. So the whole time I'm bringing my lure back, it's still just feet from shore. And you couldn't do that if you were in a canoe. You couldn't do it the same. And I didn't expect to do well, and bam, had a strike. Bam, another. And there were a whole group of northerns that had moved in to that shallow water along the cattails, but right in close to shore. And maybe it's because this is earlier this year, I don't know. But I would never have had this type of fishing if I hadn't been waiting. I would go to certain spots. And there was another spot in the pond where a point and a sandbar comes out. And I was able to wade out on that sandbar. And it has a lot of weeds. And weeds are so critical. But as I'd wade out, I would stand in one position for a long, long time and fan cast in an arc around me to try to cover every bit of water. But I could never do that in a canoe. And I've spent my life either wading or fishing in a canoe. I've canoed the boundary waters of Minnesota where we went one day 100 and some miles. All we did was keep paddling that canoe. I'm very familiar with canoes. I'm very familiar with how to control them. But it's not in my best interest to spend my day trying to control rather than trying to fish if I go out for a fishing day. So I got to tell you, there's a tremendous, tremendous value in wading, and I've talked about it before. But if you really were able to give it a chance and to understand that it gives you a positioning and a control of the time that you can spend in any one spot, irregardless of how strong the wind is or what the current is, it really becomes a fabulous way to fish. Now, the key here is where you're able to reach with your cast, there has to be fish. If there aren't fish, in other words, if they haven't come in to that area, then you're not going to do any good at all. But in the spring, most of the fish are near the shoreline or within, let's say, as far as you can cast out. And so it really can become a fun way to fish. There's risks and there's dangers whenever you're wading, especially as you get older, but we've talked about that before, and I'll touch on that as I go forward. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report.